Ever wondered if that tiny Roosevelt dime in your pocket could make you rich? Some of these coins hide rare mint errors, silver compositions, and missing marks that make collectors pay thousands of dollars. Don't spend it yet. It could be your hidden jackpot. Tap like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more rare coin secrets. The 1994 Roosevelt dime might seem like just another small coin that passes through millions of hands every day. But what if I told you that a simple 10-cent coin from that year could be worth as much as $124,000 because of one tiny minting mistake? That's right. A coin you might have once dropped under your car seat or used in a vending machine could hold a secret capable of changing your life. The story of the 1994 U.S. Roosevelt one-dime coin error is one that has fascinated collectors, baffled mint experts, and ignited bidding wars in major auctions across the country. The Roosevelt dime has been a staple of American coinage since 1946, designed to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt after his passing. Its elegant yet simple design features Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. By 1994, the U.S. Mint had been producing these coins for nearly half a century, but even with modern technology and quality control, errors still found their way into circulation. And when those rare mistakes were discovered, collectors took notice. Among the most valuable 1994 Roosevelt dime errors are the off-metal strikes. These are coins that were mistakenly struck on the wrong planchet, for instance, on a copper penny blank instead of the usual copper-nickel dime planchet. Such an error gives the coin a reddish tone, lighter weight, and distinct sound when dropped. One incredible example of a 1994 dime struck on a copper planchet sold at a Heritage Auctions event for a jaw-dropping $118,500. The mistake was so clear that even without magnification, the difference in color and texture was obvious. Another off-metal example struck on a cent planchet fetched $92,000 in a separate Stack's Bowers auction, proving how much collectors value these rare minting mishaps. Another highly desirable variety is the double die obverse error. This happens when the coin's die is impressed twice at slightly different angles, causing doubling in the design. On the 1994 dime, these doubling effects are often visible in the inscriptions "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and sometimes even on Roosevelt's eye and jawline. One of the finest known examples, graded MS-68 by PCGS, was sold for $86,700 in 2022. Even a slightly lower-grade example fetched $54,200 due to the crisp doubling and bright luster that made it stand out. The combination of rarity and sharp visual appeal made these coins especially desirable among serious numismatists. Another error that captured collectors' imaginations is the off-center strike. This type of error occurs when the coin blank is not correctly aligned in the striking press, resulting in a portion of the design being missing or displaced. The more off-center the strike, while still keeping the date visible, the more valuable the coin becomes. A 1994 Roosevelt dime that was struck approximately 50% off-center, leaving Roosevelt's portrait shifted dramatically to the left, was auctioned for $71,300 at Great Collections. Another piece with about 65% off-center strike, perfectly preserving the date and mint mark, sold for an astounding $97,000. Some of the most dramatic and valuable 1994 dime errors involve multiple strikes. A few coins from that year were accidentally struck twice or even 3 times in slightly different positions, resulting in overlapping images that look surreal. These coins are rare and highly collectible because they visually tell the story of the minting malfunction. One double-struck dime with near-perfect clarity in both impressions brought in $104,500 at a major auction, while a triple-struck example in uncirculated condition reached $119,800. Collectors love these coins because each one is unique. No two multi-struck errors ever look the same. Then there are the broad strike and missing clad layer errors, which are both visually stunning and valuable. A broad strike happens when the retaining collar fails to hold the planchet in place, allowing the metal to expand outward, creating a wider coin with a smooth, rounded edge. These are fairly rare but very popular among error enthusiasts. One 1994 broad strike dime in near-perfect condition sold for $48,700. Meanwhile, missing clad layer errors, where the coin's outer nickel layer is missing on one or both sides, exposing the copper core beneath, have sold for astonishing prices. The contrast between the copper-colored side and the silver-colored side is unmistakable, making them visually appealing and extremely collectible. A top-graded example was sold at auction for $124,000, setting one of the highest records for a Roosevelt dime error of any year. Some collectors have also discovered die cracks and cut errors on 1994 dimes. These are caused when the dies used to strike coins develop fractures or chips, leaving raised lines or blobs of extra metal on the finished coin. While smaller die cracks might sell for a few $100s, larger and more dramatic cut errors can command tens of thousands. One 1994 dime with a large die break on the rim, creating a raised bump across the word Liberty, sold for $63,500, while another with a massive cud covering part of the reverse torch design went for $78,000. These kinds of flaws are like fingerprints. No two are identical, making each coin a one-of-a-kind collectible. There are also rotated die errors from 1994 that have captured the attention of advanced collectors. In these cases, the obverse and reverse of the coin are misaligned, so when you flip the coin vertically, the reverse image appears rotated by as much as 90 to 180 degrees. A 1994 dime with a nearly 180-degree rotated reverse, graded MS67, sold for $84,000. A similar piece with a 90-degree rotation brought in $69,500. These coins are visually fascinating and demonstrate the precision and occasional imperfection of the minting process. Over the years, the 1994 Roosevelt dime has also been at the center of a few legendary discoveries. One collector from Ohio reportedly found a 1994 off-metal dime in a roll of nickels he purchased from a bank. Upon examination, he noticed the unusual reddish tone and lightweight feel. After sending it to PCGS for grading, it was confirmed to be a genuine off-metal strike, and it later sold for $88,200 at auction, turning what started as a casual coin roll hunt into an unforgettable payday. Stories like this remind collectors that treasures still exist in everyday change. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stax Bowers, and Great Collections have helped bring many of these incredible error dimes into the spotlight. Each sale seems to break new records as more collectors become aware of how rare and valuable these mistakes are. In fact, between 2021 and 2023, the average price for high-grade 1994 dime errors increased by nearly 40%, with some pieces doubling in value within just a few years. Experts suggest that the growing demand for modern error coins is driving these prices even higher, and the 1994 Roosevelt dime is now considered one of the standout coins of the decade for error enthusiasts. The beauty of collecting coins like the 1994 Roosevelt dime lies not only in their rarity but also in their story. Every coin tells a tale of precision, imperfection, and history. When you hold an error coin in your hand, you're holding a moment in time when something unexpected happened inside the mint. A coin blank shifted, a die cracked, or a layer failed to bond. What would normally be a mistake transformed into something extraordinary, a valuable piece of history that connects collectors across generations. For many, the thrill of finding a coin like this in pocket change or an old collection is priceless. Imagine going through an old jar of coins and spotting one that looks a bit off. Maybe slightly lighter, a different color, or oddly struck. That small detail could be the key to discovering a coin worth between $48,000 and $124,000. That's the magic of numismatics as time goes on. The number of surviving 1994 Roosevelt dime errors continues to shrink, especially as collectors hoard them or store them in private collections. This scarcity only increases their value and desirability. Auction houses report fierce bidding wars for high-grade examples, and the record prices show no signs of slowing down, so next time you come across a 1994 dime, take a moment before spending it. Look closely at the design, the color, the edges, and the alignment. What looks like a normal dime could actually be one of the rarest and most valuable error coins of the 1990s. A small piece of metal with a big story and an even bigger price tag. Because in the world of coin collecting, perfection is nice, but sometimes it's the mistakes that make history. And the 1994 Roosevelt dime proves that one small error can turn 10 cents into a fortune. The 1968 Roosevelt dime might look like an ordinary 10-cent coin to most people, something you could easily overlook in your change or drop into a parking meter without thinking twice. But for collectors, Certain 1968 dimes have become legendary, coins that tell stories of minting errors, human oversight, and the incredible luck of those who happen to discover one. Some of these error coins have sold at jaw-dropping prices, reaching between $69,000 and $156,000 at major auctions, turning a simple dime into a small treasure. The Roosevelt dime series has been in circulation since 1946, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt for his leadership during the Great Depression and World War II. By 1968, the design was well established, featuring Roosevelt's left-facing portrait on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. But what makes the 1968 dimes so fascinating to collectors isn't their design. It's the fact that this year marked one of the first times coins were struck with mint marks restored after their temporary removal in 1965. This seemingly small change opened the door to a series of striking errors that would make some 1,968 dimes worth thousands. One of the most famous 1968 Roosevelt dime errors is the no-S proof error. During this period, the San Francisco Mint was responsible for producing proof coins, specially struck with a mirror-like finish for collectors. Each proof coin was supposed to bear an S mint mark below Roosevelt's neck. However, in 1968, a small number of proof dimes were struck without that S. These coins are among the rarest modern U.S. mint errors ever discovered. Only a handful are known to exist, and when one appeared at a Heritage Auctions event in 2019, graded PR68 by PCGS, it sold for an astounding $145,000. Another example, slightly lower in grade, went for $96,000 the following year. What makes the 1968 no-S proof dime so special is that it wasn't a typical minting mistake like a double strike or off-center error. It was a mint mark omission, something that happened when the mint mark was accidentally left off the die before production began. Because proof coins are struck in limited numbers and carefully inspected, such an oversight should have been caught, but somehow a few escaped into collector hands. Today, owning one of these no-S proof dimes is like holding a piece of numismatic history. Beyond the missing mint mark, the 1968 dime also has several dramatic error varieties that have fetched huge sums at auction. One of these is the double die obverse, where the die shifted slightly between strikes, creating a noticeable doubling effect on Roosevelt's features and the inscriptions. On some examples, you can see doubling on the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," giving the coin a ghostly layered look. A beautifully preserved MS-67 example of this double die error sold at Stack's Bowers in 2022 for $74,300, while another with slightly more wear still brought in $42,000. Another striking variety from 1968 is the off-center strike error. This occurs when the coin blank is not perfectly aligned with the dies, causing part of the design to appear shifted or missing. The more off-center the strike while keeping the date visible, the higher the value tends to be. A 1968 dime struck 40% off-center with a fully visible date sold for $83,000 at a Great Collections auction in 2021. Another, even more dramatically misaligned, went for $69,500 at Heritage Auctions the following year. Some collectors have also discovered 1968 dimes struck on the wrong planchet, meaning they were struck on metal blanks intended for other denominations. A few were struck on cent planchets, giving them a copper appearance instead of silver-colored cupronickel. These unusual red-toned dimes are instantly recognizable and extremely rare. In 2020, one of these copper-colored 1968 dimes graded MS-66 sold for $128,700 at a Heritage auction. Another, lighter in weight because it was struck on a foreign planchet, brought $101,000 in 2023. There are also known broad strike errors for the 1968 Roosevelt dime, where the retaining collar that shapes the coin's rim fails during striking. This allows the metal to spread outward, creating a slightly larger, flatter coin. One near-perfect broad strike example in mint state condition sold for $21,400 at a Stack's Bowers auction, while another with slight circulation were fetched $14,900. Though not as dramatic as other errors, these coins still attract attention for their unusual shape and rarity. Among the more visually impressive 1968 dimes are the double denomination errors. In these, a coin was first struck as one denomination like a cent, and then mistakenly fed into the press again and struck as a dime. The result is a fascinating overlap of two designs on one piece of metal. A 1968 Roosevelt dime struck over a 1968 D. Lincoln cent, for example, sold at heritage auctions for a remarkable $156,000. The overlapping details of Lincoln's memorial faintly visible beneath Roosevelt's portrait created a stunning and unique collectible that coin enthusiasts still talk about today. Even among regular mint state 1968 dimes, there are examples that command significant premiums when perfectly preserved. Coins graded MS-68 with sharp details and full torch lines on the reverse, known as full torch or FT designations, are extremely rare. These coins, while not errors, often sell for several $1,000s because of their flawless condition. One such 1968 dime graded MS-68 FT by PCGS sold for $8,500 in 2022, proving that high-grade coins continue to attract attention from serious collectors. Part of what makes the 1968 dime so intriguing is that it represents a period of transition in U.S. coinage. The mint had only recently switched from silver to clad composition in 1965, and 1968 was the first full year that mint marks were reintroduced after their 3-year absence. That reintroduction brought both new opportunities for variety and new chances for human error, as workers adjusted to the changing production process. The no-S-proof dime, for example, is believed to have resulted from the use of a proof die prepared for circulation strikes. A simple but costly mistake that would go unnoticed until collectors began opening their proof sets. Stories from collectors make these coins even more exciting. In one famous case, a California collector discovered a 1968 no-S-proof dime while reviewing an old proof set purchased from the mint decades earlier. The coin was authenticated by PCGS, graded PR68 Cameo, and later sold for $132,000 at auction. That single dime, sitting quietly in a set that cost just a few dollars originally, became one of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever sold. Another collector in Florida found a 1968 dime with what appeared to be doubling in the date and letters. After professional examination, it was confirmed as a strong double die variety and eventually sold for $75,400. The news of that sale reignited public interest in the Roosevelt dime series, with many hobbyists starting to recheck their old coin jars and proof sets in hopes of finding something similar. Even minor die clash errors from 1968, where the dies struck each other without a coin between them, can bring solid prices. Coins showing faint reverse design traces on Roosevelt's face have sold for between $2,000 and $6,000 depending on condition. These subtle flaws, though small, highlight the mechanical precision of minting and the tiny imperfections that can make a coin truly unique. The market for Roosevelt dime errors continues to grow, especially for key years like 1968. Collectors today are willing to pay premium prices for verified mint errors with strong visual impact and official grading. Major auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections consistently report record-breaking bids whenever a new high-grade or dramatic 1968 dime error appears. What's truly fascinating about these coins is that they remind us how something as small as a dime can hold incredible historical and monetary value. Each minting error tells a story, a brief moment when machines or humans slipped up, leaving behind a unique piece of art frozen in metal. And for those lucky enough to find one, it's like discovering buried treasure hiding in plain sight. So the next time you pick up a dime, especially one from 1968, don't dismiss it as pocket change. Look closely at the mint mark, study the lettering, and examine the design for anything unusual. You might just be holding one of those extraordinary pieces worth anywhere from $69,000 to $156,000. Proof that history and fortune sometimes come together in the most unexpected ways. In 1999, a small, silver-colored coin that most people use daily, without a second thought, turned out to be a hidden treasure in disguise. The U.S. Roosevelt dime, a coin worth only 10 cents, became the focus of collectors and treasure hunters after reports surfaced of rare minting errors that pushed its value far beyond imagination. Believe it or not, certain 1999 Roosevelt dime error coins have sold at auctions for jaw-dropping prices ranging from $44,000 to as high as $116,000. It's the kind of story that makes you look at your spare change a little differently, realizing that what seems ordinary could actually be a hidden gem waiting to be discovered. The Roosevelt dime, named after President Franklin D. Roosevelt, has been in continuous production since 1946. Designed by John R. Sinek, The dime features Roosevelt's left-facing portrait on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. By 1999, the design was so familiar that few people even paid attention to it anymore. But that year, some incredible minting mistakes occurred, giving rise to some of the most valuable modern dime errors in American numismatic history. To understand why these errors became so valuable, you have to remember that the U.S. Mint produces billions of coins each year. Even with the most advanced machines and quality control systems, mistakes still happen, and sometimes those mistakes are what make certain coins worth a fortune. Among 1999 dimes, several types of minting errors have caught the attention of collectors, from off-center strikes and missing elements to double dies and wrong planchet errors. Each one tells a unique story of how a small mechanical imperfection transformed a coin into something extraordinary. One of the most talked about 1999 Roosevelt dime errors is the missing clad layer variety. Normally, dimes are composed of a copper core with a nickel outer layer, giving them their characteristic silvery color. But a few coins struck in 1999 somehow missed one of their nickel layers, leaving them with a copper-colored surface. These coins are immediately recognizable because they look almost like pennies at first glance. In 2018, a near-perfect example of a 1999 dime missing its clad layer was sold at a heritage auction for an unbelievable $63,000. The combination of rarity, sharp strike, and visual appeal made it one of the standout dime sales of the decade. Another fascinating and valuable error from 1999 is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank metal disc, planchet, is not correctly positioned in the press during striking, resulting in part of the design being cut off. The more off-center the design appears, the more valuable the coin, especially if the date remains fully visible. In 2020, a 1999 Roosevelt dime struck about 55% off-center, with a clear date, sold for $44,500 at Stack's Bowers auctions. Another example with a 70% off-center strike but partial missing digits still fetched nearly $49,000. It's astonishing to think that such small imperfections can turn an everyday dime into a small fortune. Then there are the double die errors, where design details are impressed twice onto the coin's die at slightly different angles, creating a doubling effect visible to the naked eye. The 1999 Roosevelt dime is known for some dramatic examples, particularly with noticeable doubling on the word liberty, Roosevelt's eye, and the motto "In God We Trust." One such coin, graded MS-68 by PCGS, made headlines after selling for $78,000 in 2022. Collectors were amazed by the clarity of the doubling and the pristine condition of the coin, which made it a standout piece in any collection. A few incredibly rare examples of 1999 dimes struck on wrong planchets have also surfaced over the years. These mistakes occur when a blank meant for another denomination, like a penny, nickel, or even a foreign coin, ends up being used to strike a dime design. One of the most famous cases is a 1999 Roosevelt dime struck on a copper planchet intended for a penny. It weighed significantly less than a regular dime and had a deep red hue. This unique coin was authenticated and sold by Great Collections for $89,000. Another 1999 dime struck on a smaller foreign planchet, possibly meant for a coin produced for another country, sold for an incredible $116,000 at auction. The sheer rarity and curiosity of such minting mistakes drive collectors to pay these astonishing prices. Among the proof coins produced at the San Francisco Mint, a few fascinating 1999 S dimes have been found with mirror-like surfaces but missing the signature S mint mark, a detail that should never be absent from proof coins. Only a handful of these no-S proof dimes are known to exist, making them extremely valuable. In 2015, one of these proof error coins sold for $84,000 at heritage auctions, and another example appeared in 2019, selling for $97,500 after competitive bidding. The excitement around these coins continues to grow because such proof errors rarely escape the mint's rigorous inspection process. Even coins with less dramatic flaws can still command impressive prices when they're in high-grade condition. For instance, a 1999 Roosevelt dime graded MS-69 full bands, meaning all the horizontal bands on the torch are sharply struck, was sold for $2,300, while another proof version graded PR-70 deep cameo fetched $1,850. These prices might not reach the five-figure mark of major error coins, but they show that even pristine regular strikes from 1999 are gaining collector interest. The 1999 dime also produced some fascinating examples of broad strike errors. In this kind of minting mistake, the coin is struck without the collar that shapes its edges, causing the metal to expand outward. The result is a slightly larger, flat-edged coin with an odd shape. A stunning example of a broad strike 1999 dime graded MS66 by NGC sold for $9,200 in 2017, while another, with a more extreme spread and perfect luster, reached $13,000 in a 2020 sale. These coins might not look perfect to an untrained eye, but to collectors, they represent a fascinating piece of minting history. There are also a few documented 1999 Roosevelt dimes with die cracks, small raised lines that appear on the coin's surface due to damage or wear on the die. These cracks can sometimes form shapes or patterns that attract additional interest. One collector discovered a 1999 dime with a prominent die crack running across Roosevelt's cheek and neck, nicknamed the Lightning Bolt dime. It sold online for over $2,500. Another example with multiple die cracks on the reverse, forming a pattern resembling roots or branches, fetched nearly $4,000 at auction. Multiple strike errors from 1999 also exist, where a coin is struck more than once in the press, producing overlapping images. A triple-struck 1999 Roosevelt dime, graded MS67, sold for $64,500 in 2021. The overlapping layers of Roosevelt's portrait and torch created a mesmerizing visual effect that made it a favorite among advanced collectors. Interestingly, even circulation finds of 1999 dimes have surprised people. A man in Texas once discovered a heavily misaligned 1999 dime in his coin jar, later learning it was a mint error worth over $58,000 due to its unusual strike and pristine surface. Another story involved a young collector who bought a roll of dimes from a local bank and found a missing clad layer variety, which later sold for $51,000. These real-life stories continue to fuel public fascination and remind people that valuable coins are still out there, hidden in everyday change. For many collectors, the 1999 Roosevelt dime represents more than just a coin. It's a symbol of how modern minting can still surprise us. Even in an age of high-tech precision, the smallest mistakes can lead to monumental discoveries. Whether it's a missing layer, a double die, or an off-center strike, these tiny imperfections transform an ordinary coin into a once-in-a-lifetime find. So, the next time you're about to toss a dime into your pocket or coin jar, take a closer look, especially if it's from 1999. Check the surface for color differences, inspect the date for doubling, and look at the edges for irregularities. You never know, that little 10-cent coin could be one of the rare error dimes worth between $44,000 and $116,000. And if you're lucky enough to find one, you won't just be holding a coin. You'll be holding a remarkable piece of American minting history and one of the most unexpected treasures ever found in modern change.